All the talk this week following AEW Full Gear on Saturday was, why have they made Samoa Joe the champion? And why do we take off Hangman Adam Page? I love stuff like that, as we talked about on our review, because it's interesting and it creates conversation, and a few people go totally crazy, but we can ignore those totally nuts people and actually get into the nitty-gritty about what you don't like, what you do like. But I think AEW took a courageous decision to use silly words that should never be used in relation to pro wrestling, which they then did again during the first night of the C2. So I'm just going to lay my hat in the sand. I agree with it. Now listen, at the moment we don't know the exact direction because we kind of did an angle on Dynamite just to set the seeds and hint at what path we may be taking it down. But Samoa Joe comes out and he's all like, man, I'm the best, everybody should love me. When we got a video, and some people like to deny this, quite clearly AEW's been planning this for a while. The Hook heel turn, they showed it. They showed video clips. You can't do this in retrospect. But we did see Samoa Joe say to Hook, we're always going to have your back. We did have Hook when he was by fire or something, saying maybe I'm in the ops and maybe I'm not, which all things considered was a dumb thing to say because he was giving the game away, but I didn't pick up on it. So Hook got one over me. And there were all those matches where he tapped out really quickly. And I remember we talked about it on here and other people talked about it. So what are they doing with Hook, man? And so many people thought he was going to get a big win. We were doing that thing. You can lose because you're about to win the Royal Rumble. You're about to win the Money in the Bank. You're about to win this championship. But no, it was all to help Samoa Joe get the world championship off Hangman Adam Page. And I really liked that. Hook came out, he cut the start of his promo and called himself the best second-generation wrestler ever, which I like. Let's start leaning into that as well. I find it crazy when we don't talk about who our fathers or who our mothers are, because that's going to get an easy reaction from the fans, whether you're a good guy or a bad guy. But as a heel, you can be pure nepotism, which is what Dominic Mysterio does very well. But that's when Hangman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland with Prince Nana interrupted. I was like, you goofs, he was about to give us an explanation. I really hope AEW don't forget to do that, because sometimes you don't get the big promo. But even if Hook wants to say, well, I did it because I love Samoa Joe, you have to hear that come out of his mouth, right? Samoa Joe is my mentor. Samoa Joe knows best. Hangman Adam Page, you're an idiot. And he needs to say something about Eddie Kingston as well because they were teaming together. He said a few words. I'm always happy to wait because sometimes I jump on things and we learn news later on that kind of does make it make sense. Seeing Swerve and Hangman together is also a big deal, so they're going to have to cut a promo. Totally mad. They had chains, and Samoa Joe and the Opportunities now have dojo friends. The dojo friends, they're just used to wrestling security but dolled up in a different way. So they come out to try and help, and yeah, Hangman and Swerve literally choked them over the top rope. If we go back all the way to Blood and Guts, to last night's episode of Dynamite, it's quite the run for gruesome professional wrestling. I talked about that at Full Gear as well, so you can go back and listen to me talk about that. It was the Blood and Guts show. Go listen to me talk about it. We also had this crazy match with Tony Storm coming up. We'll talk about it later. Maybe after that, just slow it down a little bit, only because we do get desensitized to this stuff. Not that I mind. AEW should do whatever the flub they want to do if they think it relates to the story. But just from an eye to a television screen perspective, you always want to keep the shock and awe alive. But it's got me very, very excited. Samoa Joe is just so good that I can't get mad at it. I just can't get mad at it. And given that I think the offshoot of this is going to help Hook as well, which is what we should be doing, it's use the legends who are going to reach down and pick other people up. Yeah, I'm totally for it. And again, a surprise victory that then sort of sits within my tum-tum makes me go, well, if Samoa Joe can win, who else is going to win? It's going to make title matches more interesting. It's going to make the C2 more interesting. And even when you have a random bout on a Dynamite, it will stow in your brain for a little bit and you'll be second-guessing yourself. That is the perfect wrestling environment. You always want there to be jeopardy. And the only criticism that I will not agree with, because if you said to me, oh no, I think somebody else should have taken the belt off Hangman Adam Page, I think there's an argument there. But to say, why are we doing this with Hook? Because Hook is a young guy. Like so many people say, oh man, Hook, I don't know, what, a year or 2 years ago, was on fire, we were so excited, and then he lost his way. Let's say that's true. I think that's a little bit harsh, but sure, he's not as over as he was. You don't just give up on him. The talent was clearly there because he did have that connection with the audience. Now it's about sitting down with the chess pieces and the puzzle board and figuring out what do we have to move where in order to get Hook to where we want him to be. I just find it crazy. It's like Julia Hart missed the moonsault on this episode of Dynamite, and some people going, she's the worst wrestler ever. She's hit that moonsault 100 times. She's allowed to miss one, and Hook is allowed to be put into a situation, let's say 6 months to a year ago, where things weren't working out when the creative team and Tony Khan sits down and they're like, right, Hook is our project for 2026. What can we do? And so far, so good. Again, he spat fire when he said, I am the second best generation wrestler in the world. He's teaming up with Samoa Joe and Power Powerhouse Hobbs and Shibata, who should also benefit from this. So I really hope it plays out, and I really hope we can get to the summer of next year, and this isn't going to happen that soon, but you could do Hangman versus Hook for the World Championship and nobody would find it weird, right? The more younger people you can elevate, I actually don't mind if a bunch of quote-unquote old dudes are in the main event scene, because I literally, no one ever believes me, I just enjoy wrestling on a week-to-week basis. Of course I remember what's happened or where I'd like to see it going, otherwise we wouldn't be able to do these videos. 2 hours on a Wednesday or 3 hours on a Monday or whatever the flub it would be on a Friday. I'm just like, am I enjoying the content that is smacking me into the face? I don't go, well, I would love to enjoy this CM Punk promo, but he's 47 years old. I'm like, no. And hopefully, of course, I need the younger guys to come along, but eventually going to have to do that anyway. So, yes, this is good for Hook. I think Hook will grab it by the balls. I shouldn't have said that, and ride it all the way to Success Town. And let's say he doesn't, and I want all wrestlers to succeed because I think that's a better way to live your life. Even if it doesn't, you try, it doesn't work, you try again with somebody else. We have seen that so many times in the wrestling business too. It's essentially known as the churn. Some people are going to click, some people are destined for main event status, but then they end up in the mid-card, but they still have decent careers. There is no one-stop shop to do this. All you need to be able to do is generate noise and be over, in inverted commas, and there's a million ways to do that. I really like it. I really like the Ops. They've really grown as a group because at first they're like, why have we thrown these three people together? I would presume this always was the plan. Hangman Adam Page needs to cut a big promo, but we know that he can do that. Swerve Strickland being back brings star power. Enjoyed it all. I like it. I'm down. It is the right choice. Otherwise, the C2. The C2 is brilliant, right? And there's no real surprise to it. It's just because it's like sports. And no, I don't think WWE should be like sports. Every time I say that, someone goes, me. I'm not talking about the other company right now. I'm talking about AEW. You put two people in a ring, you make it clear there's no interference, you get 3 points for a win, you get no points for a loss. I think it's 1 point for a draw. I think that is correct. And you pick your favorite, and that will then establish how you feel about life for the next couple of months. That's what we do in football or soccer or American football or basketball. It just is. Like, I'm an Arsenal fan, right? I'm over the moon right now because we're top of the Champions League table, we're top of the Premier League table. This is crazy. We barely let in any goals. Like, our record in Europe is absolutely perfect. But of course, in seasons prior to this, I'm like, man, this sucks. And I'm a little bit grumpy about it. It's the same here. Maybe you pick Darby Allin. Maybe you pick John Moxley. Don't pick Mascara Dorado. I don't think he's going to do very well. He may be in there to take a bunch of pins. But we had Kevin Knight versus Darby Allin, which I would have bet my hairline on, and Kevin Knight won. That is a ballsy move, man. And I love that AEW did that, especially because we built this in as well. The commentators are like, well, no wonder Darby can't do any moves. He's dead. Basically, he is as well. Because he got set on fire and then, Pac scratched at him in the Full Gear match. And you just know that Darby Allin's first win is probably going to come when he has his rematch with Pac, because they're both on the same end of the bracket and there is no interference and he's able to win. Does the world of good for Kevin Knight. And I can't remember which way around it came now. I think the Moxie match was first, but either way, given that Moxie had lost so much because he lost at the pay-per-view as well, I thought Dorado maybe he was going to win. He took about 75-8% of that match before he shooting star pressed right into Moxie's knees, who applied the choke. Dorado went to sleep. This is probably on me. I'd like to see more people tap out in a choke, because I think maybe in real life you would do that for sure because you're a fighting champion. But I think in wrestling, in order to really sell the emotion of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't get in my hours and I've gone night-night, you have to have some tap-outs, right? I think we've gone too far the other way. This is not a big deal at all. And you had Claudia Castagnoli versus Orange Cassidy in the main event. And by that point, I was like, well, I've kind of been taken all over the place in the previous matches. Orange Cassidy is losing all the time. Claudia is losing all the time. So this could go either way. They have a great match. They're two underrated talents. Claudia gets the mega super, so get uppercut. And then everybody comes out from both brackets of the C2 and they have a big brawl. Just to let you know, we don't know where this is going to go. Okada was watching on, so that was interesting too. And, you can also maybe see that we're going to do the Death Riders versus the Don Callis family, or that could be a subplot that runs through it. But it was just a great start to the whole thing. There's just something about it. I guess it feels legit, apart from one thing. I'm going to get this wrong. I don't have my notes with me, as you can see. But we also got Okada versus Carl Fletcher. Carl Fletcher won. Second time he's done that in the C2. Also a brilliant match. And of course, that can tease the friction between the Don Callis family, and Takeshita will not be with them by the end of this tournament. But Okada has now given up his Continental belt, or is it the other one? No, it's the Continental, but it's the Continental Classic, which means he's now the international champion. So no longer the unified champion because they've been split up, but he could lose the International Championship at some point. No, he can lose the International belt if he doesn't win the tournament, because the winner then has to get the unified title. It's way too convoluted. Carl Fletcher should be the International Champion right now. He beat Okada in a match. Or he should go, oh, hi, Okada. I understand we're doing this tournament, but I really would like a match for that championship. It never needs to be that convoluted, man. That is way too confusing. I've said it on other videos today. It's like doing a Professor Layton puzzle. If I move that there and I times the two, and I talk to that weird kid that hangs out with Layton with the hat, maybe he can help me. It's way too much. It's just way too much. And even when Tony Schiavone was telling me, maybe it was Excalibur, I was like looking off into the distance. I can't keep up with this. Frantically making notes going, carry the X, plus the 2, where is Mount Kilimanjaro? Totally nuts. I really do think we need to simplify the process, because that's why the C2 has been so good. Winner, loser, points, league system, who's going to do it? I do think the finals will be Okada versus Takeshita, but that's fine. Wrestling always goes, this just ties in, right? Wrestling often goes for the most obvious choice, and it's the right choice, because the obvious choice, and your brain doesn't have to overthink. With this, I was basically sitting down and trying to do science, and I am by no means a scientist. However, the more important point, I suppose, is that Carl Fletcher versus Okada was great. Carl Fletcher to have a tremendous run, and 2026 should be the year of him. Okada is just brilliant too. At one point, he almost got himself DQ'd by kicking the referee, into the ropes to groin Carl Fletcher, and he just begged for forgiveness. I think Okada's AEW run has cemented him for me as one of the best of the modern generation for sure. His work in New Japan is unmatched, especially how good he is in big-time bouts. But bringing all this character and nonsense into AEW, it's made me like him even more. And we mentioned the Julia Hart thing. They did lose to Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron. I think we may be doing a babyface match. Because after the John Moxley match, Toni Storm does come out. Really cool. Marina Shafir said to John Moxley, your cave woman daughter, which is a good line. Ultimately, she hasn't been able to come up with a stipulation because they wanted the pay-per-view. So out comes Mina. They're doing a hardcore holiday death match. It's Christmas time. It's Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to my American friends. Hope you have a great time. And they're going to use a bunch of weapons. Now, it goes back to what we just said. AEW, as far as I'm concerned, is leaning into it a little bit too much. There is a justification here, because if Marina Shafir and Megan Bayne aren't going to the finals, you want to protect them, right? They come across like badasses. Being involved in some absolutely crazy weapon match when they get hit with a kendo stick, a chair, go through some stairs, go through a ladder, and all manner of things, whoever takes the pin, Marina or Megan, they're going to be totally protected. So actually, it does make sense. And I suppose it could go the other way as well. Toni Storm and Mina are two of the biggest stars, Toni Storm especially. So if you don't want them to lose clean, essentially neither of these teams are now going to lose clean. You can do babyface versus heel in the final. You can now do babyface. Kind of feel like Willow and Harley could win, because I think it would be a nice surprise. And maybe they would benefit from it just because, again, Toni Storm is one of the biggest stars, full stop. Forget the women's division. But I like it. For some reason, I've got a bee in my bonnet about the C2 starting and the women's tag tournament not being done. I do think the C2 overshadows it a little bit, but as long as we have that big final, it feels like a big deal. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, we have brand new women's tag team champions, and we actually keep them on screen and don't allow them to vanish, everything will be okay. I think they've done a pretty good job. We had a bunch of videos throughout all of this as well. I'm probably going to forget some of them. But FTR, obviously new tag team champions. Eddie Kingston wanting his revenge, starting with Shibata. The only other issue's probably a bit strong. But Kenny Omega cut a really good promo just saying, I've made mistakes, especially with Don Callis too, so I can't really hold that against my friends. And the Young Bucks are hanging out with his dressing room. And maybe I've missed something here. The Young Bucks, and this is so irrelevant, who cares? This is the smallest piece of information ever. The Young Bucks aren't getting their $500,000 from the $1 million match, even though they won, because they turned on the Don Callis family to help Kenny Omega after the match. If you went to HR and told them that, they'd be like, no, you're still going to get your bonus because that happened before. Don't care what you do afterwards. That's unofficial territory for the organization. Give them the money. It doesn't matter. It's so irrelevant. It's not even real money. But I feel like we're building sympathy where there doesn't need to be sympathy. Or Matt and Nick Jackson should be like Josh Alexander. You stole our money. And maybe that's probably is what's going to happen. We'll get a 6-man tag between them and the Don Callis family, and the money will be on the line. But Matt and Nick Jackson should still have the money. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever moaned about. It's so minute in the grand scheme of things. I do like that they're back together. You can say they've rushed it maybe, but this kind of prolonged it a little bit. But I just think sometimes, use my catchphrase, you want to feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum, right? You watch wrestling to be entertained. We don't need to prolong these things. Just give people a barrel of joy, let them dance in the street, and they can be happy again. And there's so much nonsense in the world, sometimes I just want to put a smile on my face. Which brought us to the end of Dynamite. I probably forgot some things, so please do forgive me, but I did enjoy it a lot. It's just that C2. Turns out I absolutely love it, and it probably is, to repeat myself, because I'm into real sports. Like, I watched the Champions League, and I'm looking at the leagues, like PSG did this, and obviously Liverpool having a terrible season. Where does that put them in the league, and how could Chelsea come back, and what Newcastle are going to do? And Real Madrid did this, and Barcelona did that. Barcelona lost this week to Chelsea. I just find it interesting. You can fantasy book in your head, well, they need these many points here, and you can do it in the C2 too. It's a stupid thing to say. So when you can sort of merge those two barriers, I just think it's a barrel of fun, to use that word for the second time. But I'd like to know what you think about this, so please do drop me a comment below, like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Subscribe is the big one, as always. Otherwise, yes, watch-alongs continue. We are doing Austin versus The Rock from WrestleMania 19 today. Quick break from the John Cena tour, but then we're doing John Cena and Cesaro from 2015. Kind of ties into this episode. It's only $5. We'd appreciate the support. It means the world to me. The Gorilla Mind sale has a few more days. Black Friday, whatever we want to call it, up to 40% off, free shipping. Their pre-workout is the best. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend them. Use the code Simon to get this money off. Simon316, if you want to come and say hello, go to my TikTok, just search for Simon Miller. The promo videos, when WWE promos go bad, when I pretend to be a wrestling producer, have finally found a little bit of traction on there, so they're mostly going to be on there, so please do follow me if you like those videos. Same with Cameo, if you want a happy holiday message, prowrestlingtees.com/Simon Miller for merchandise. Otherwise, have a terrific day. I will see you for a Mad Survivor Series weekend. Take care.